Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Ite Namani.
We're in a lounge, as a kind of a separate departure lounge. And Prabhupada asked Jagadish to read from the Bhagavatam. So Jagadish was reading, and Prabhupada went to the back of the room and lay down on one of the benches, seemingly to take a nap. And Jagadish was reading, and Jagadish, he could put an elephant that was charging you to sleep if he wanted to. Sometimes he had a voice like that. So he got through one purport and everyone was out. So he stopped and looked up, and when he stopped, Prabhupada lifted his head and said, "I am listening." So Prabhupada was always aware, and he wasn't really sleeping.
During the fire sacrifice, I remember at one point that there was a young lady that we had in the Vancouver temple. She was just 17, and she was very nervous. And when Srila Prabhupada asked everyone what the four regular principles were and how many rounds a day do you chant. But with this girl, she couldn't remember the four regular principles. She said, no illicit sex, no intoxication, no meat eating, and chant Hare Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada said, all right, next.
One summer, Srila Prabhupada was visiting with us, and it was very hot. So he wanted to go outside, and at that time, there was no garden, a nice spot for him to sit. So he went out and sat on the lawn in a chair on Graham Street, which is the busy street. And all these cars were zipping by, and Prabhupada was sitting out in the lawn in a chair with just a sannyas, what do you call that? The top, whatever, the sannyasi top. Someone was fanning him with a peacock fan. We were sitting out around Prabhupada, and this man walked by on the sidewalk. And when he saw Prabhupada, he just did a double take, and it was more than he could handle, because just after he looked, and then he walked by, and he just couldn't handle it, so he walked back, and in a very demanding voice, he said to Prabhupada, "Why is that man fanning you?" And Prabhupada, was just sitting very relaxed in the chair, and he just said, "It is hot." So this man he didn't know what to say. He just turned on his heel and walked off. So Prabhupada kind of demolished his whole irritation with 2 words, or 3 words. "It is hot." And that was it. So that was kind of a humorous.
There were more questions asked. I can't remember everything, but then they began to say, well, Srila Prabhupada, do we have to follow a GBC? Can we live outside and follow the principles and read your books and still be devotees? And it went on like that. Then finally, Srila Prabhupada understood their hearts and their minds, what they were getting at. They had grown long hair, and he had a big beard, and they had given themselves astrologer names, Shambhu, Indra, and Vyas. So Prabhupada then said to them, actually, you are more advanced than I am. You do not need a guru, but I do. Therefore, you should go out into the material world and enjoy. You are no longer my disciples.
Then we got to the mango orchard, and this time one of Prabhupada's godbrothers, Damodar Maharaj, he was coming with us. So then Prabhupada had some mats set up, and he had a little portable table, and he was taking prasadam with Damodar Maharaj. He said the others could take also. We were a little off the grass mat, kind of in a distance around. And then sometimes Prabhupada would have that type of let everybody take with them picnics. So it was a little picnic in the garden. And I just remember one little thing is that after taking the fruit, he had some fruit, he gave Damodar Maharaj some fruit. Then he asked that he can serve Damodar Maharaj water. But Damodar Maharaj said, no, but after fruit we shouldn't drink water. And then Prabhupada said, no, but what you can do, the secret is you take a sweet. You take a sweet, then after sweet you must take water. And it doesn't, because if you just take water after fruit, it washes all the nutrition of the fruit out. But if you take a sweet, he said, then that somehow caps it, and you can take water after that and your fruit nutrition won't be washed away. So something to remember when you get thirsty after taking fruit. Just take a nice Mahaprasad Sandesh or Rasagula, remember Srila Prabhupada, and chant Hare Krishna.
And then drink water.
And then drink a little water, yeah.
I spent 1 night and 2 days with Srila Prabhupada. Is that the fact that his life was so perfectly organized, everything was at a certain time, you know. He had his time for waking up, time for japa, time for bath, time for massage, time for the meal, a time to take prasadam. We took a walk at a certain time. This was so impressive to me. My life had been so disorganized for so many years, and I really was very attracted to that.
And they used to bring Prabhupada in to give these silent darshans when he was sick, in his last days. And during that time, I felt he was training us for being able to communicate with him after he left the planet, because he would just come and they would place him under the tamal tree, and then the little Gurukula boy would play his cartels and they would dance for him, and one boy would just do the kirtan for Prabhupada. So we were always, of course, fighting to sit in the seats right in front of Srila Prabhupada when they would bring him in, and they would take him in front of Gaur Nitai and then Krishna Balaram and then Radha Shyamsundar, and then bring his rocking chair down in front of the tamal tree. And then we would all sort of vie for a place to sit in front of Prabhupada and just sit there. And then this little kirtan would go on, and the 2 or 3 Gurukula boys would dance for Prabhupada, and he would at most nod his head. And so it was one of those days, and usually I was sort of in the back because I was one of the newer devotees, or newest devotees, and so I always felt I didn't really have a right to push forward too much. But one day I was right in front of him, you know, and I was going to get a seat right in front of Srila Prabhupada. I couldn't believe how lucky I was. And it was sort of like everybody sort of pushing and shoving to get a place, you know. And so we went to sit down, and there was a little girl here who was a daughter of one of the devotees, and she was actually retarded. And later she left her body here and took an overdose. She took malaria medicine that was laying around her parents' room, and she left her body. And but she was there, and she was somehow going to sit down in the same seat where I was sitting, or where we were all sitting. And the girl next to me, the devotee next to me, took the little girl and sort of pushed her out of the way. And I looked at her and I thought, oh, she shouldn't have done that. Oh, she shouldn't have pushed that little child. But I sort of sat down and I looked up, and Prabhupada was staring right at us. And I thought, no, but Prabhupada, I didn't do it. I didn't do it, she did it, I didn't push the child. But he was staring just as intently at me as he was at the girl who had pushed the child. And I realized that I was just as responsible because I had done nothing about it. I had done nothing to placate the child or find the child a seat. My heart had not shown the compassion that it should have in that particular situation. So I've been working on that ever since, trying to develop that quality of, because simultaneously we have to be humble, but we also have to be compassionate toward everyone. So that was a rather direct lesson for me.
I was amazed at Srila Prabhupada's being able to transcend his bodily condition. For example, I was there when, right near the end, and the Kaviraj, who they had flown up from Calcutta, one of the best. Prabhupada had a dream about this Kaviraj, and he was a really excellent Kaviraj. You could see he was dhira, he was a sober practitioner, very Brahminical like that, and very, very reverential to Prabhupada. And he was from the Sri Sampradaya, big white and red tilak. And one day he told, I got this second hand from perhaps Harisori, but he said, you know, I had doubt that your Guru Maharaj was actually a Paramahams saint. But he said, I have assisted, thousands of people dying. And usually in this condition, when there's no more muscle and fat to cushion the nerves from being pressed against the bone, he said, people are in such agony that I have to administer morphine. And he says, your Guru Maharaj never manifests the slightest expression of pain. And I saw this, for example, in around April or so, March, April in Bombay. Srila Prabhupada's tooth had his whole jaw swell up. And like when we get toothache, we can't tolerate it. But Prabhupada just tolerated it. You never saw any difference in his mannerisms, in his way of dealing with anyone, or never complained. In fact, when the devotees, I remember that, him trying to induce him that to take care of his body, and Prabhupada wasn't agreeable. It was totally transcendental of being his body. So right up to the end, like that, was very, very evident that Srila Prabhupada was a successful Ashtanga yogi, for me at least. That he had totally transcended his bodily conception. And he was a true living saint.
I remember one point Prabhupada said that he had always prayed his whole life. Now, can you imagine such a thing? He had always prayed his whole life to be able to give up eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Can you imagine praying to Krishna, dear Krishna, please let me give up eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Prabhupada said, I have always prayed my whole life to Krishna to give up eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. He said, now I've given up the defending and the mating, and by this disease, I've also given up the eating and the sleeping. So Krishna has finally answered my prayer. And then he says, and now the smell is going. The sense of smell is gone. So that means death will come soon. He said, because when the smell goes, then death comes soon, when you cannot smell anymore. But, can you imagine, to pray to Krishna, to give up these things? So this Prabhupada saying, he was telling us, he was revealing to us his true nature. He is completely free from eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. The eating and the sleeping part is a little hard to give up, And he did. So he said that's what he always prayed Krishna to release him from, and he finally gave it. He was finally able to be released from that.